Hello, everyone. My name is Todd Barker,
And I'm Amanda Chambers.
and we're just part of the Georgia Department of Transportation's project team for the Rome to Cartersville Development Corridor project. I want to welcome you to join us right now for this live virtual event. For the next 2 hours, we will be gathering your questions and providing answers back for you. So I wanted to mention that a couple of main purposes for this event. One is to provide you with an opportunity to learn more about the project. And the other is to be able to ask questions through this format so that our project team will be able to, behind the scenes, study and find the answers for you, and then we can share them back to you. We also want to take just a moment to welcome any Spanish-speaking participants, and we will have some support during this process, during this meeting, and Ethan will be able to welcome you and provide answers back for you.
Bienvenidos a nuestro público hispanohablante y agradecemos su participación en esta sesión de preguntas y respuestas.
Okay, thank you. So we will continue, and wanted to just welcome everyone and to let you know that we have a team of specialists in a wide range of disciplines: design, environmental, noise, all these different topics that you may be thinking about or wondering about with this project. We have experts that are ready to help support and provide answers to you. So we did want to go over a few technical details now with you for this format.
So this is a 2-hour virtual open house. For everyone's benefit, we have just a few guidelines like Todd mentioned. During today's session, you as a participant will be muted and you will not appear on camera. You can submit your questions at any time using the Q&A feature that you should see on the side of your screen. Please keep your questions concise and specific to the project. We also ask that you use appropriate language. The project team will respond to questions during this time as we receive and process them. Keep in mind that we may group questions of a similar nature together, and we will not repeat questions until we have gone through all of the questions. If we don't get to your question during this time frame, or it requires a more detailed technical response, please provide your name and contact information along with your question so that we can get back to you within a 3 business day time frame. Please note that we will not be able to discuss details of individual properties during this meeting. For questions about your address, please send us your question along with your contact information in the Q&A so that we can look into it and respond to you. We also invite you to attend the public hearing and open house on September 8th, which is going to be held at the Bartow County College and Career Academy cafeteria entrance at 738 Grassdale Road Northwest in Cartersville. If there are any elected officials joining us today, please send us your name and office in the chat so that we can record it. I want to remind everyone today that all questions and answers will be a part of the official public record. If you are disconnected from this session at any point, you may log back in during the 2-hour time frame. A recording of this virtual meeting will be posted on the webpage listed on the screen within 2 weeks. Please write down the website or scan the QR code to explore the virtual content. For your convenience, we have set up closed captioning in multiple languages. To turn on closed captioning, navigate to the bottom right of your screen and click the closed captioning icon. To change the language, check the gear icon next to it and select Captions and Subtitles to choose a language.
Okay, now I'm going to go over some more background on the project, and you could go ahead and start submitting questions using that Q&A feature. Works very similar to chat, and that'll give you a chance to go ahead and start participating. And while we're going through that, that'll give us a chance also to get the specialists on board, to get them ready, and that'll then allow them to prepare a good answer back, and then we'll share it back as we go through the next 2 hours. So now the Georgia Department of Transportation proposes a highway project to connect the existing US 411 with I-75 in Bartow County. The Rome-Cartersville Development Corridor, which we refer to as RCDC, will be a divided 4-lane controlled access facility. The RCDC would be classified as a rural principal arterial and designated as a state route. A major component of the proposed project would be a new interchange at I-75 that includes a bridge over and ramps with roundabout intersection controls. The project would begin approximately half a mile south of the existing US 411, US 41 interchange and end approximately half a mile east of I-75, tying into Old Grassdale Road. The length is approximately 5.7 miles. The project team has prepared an environmental assessment. We refer to that as an EA for short, and it's been prepared by the Georgia DOT and Federal Highway Administration to evaluate environmental consequences of the proposed action. The EA has been prepared in compliance with a federal law known as the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, of 1969, and also with other laws, regulations, and executive orders that are all pertaining to environment. Now, NEPA requires federal agencies such as FHWA to consider the environmental consequences of proposed actions. The purpose of the proposed project is to improve travel conditions for automobiles and trucks between US 411, US 41, and I-75 in Bartow County. And the conditions, both existing and future, really consist of 3 interrelated needs. One is accommodating the current and future travel demand between that US 411, US 41 interchange and I-75 due to the growth in population and employment in both Bartow and Floyd counties. Secondly, increasing connectivity between Floyd County and the I-75 corridor, which will support current and planned economic development throughout that region. And finally, providing an improved truck route to accommodate freight movement and also reduce truck traffic on the existing roadways and local streets. Now, without the project, we would end up experiencing congestion and increased truck use on local roads. That would worsen as traffic volumes grow in future conditions. And no other project is programmed to provide additional access to I-75 from west of US 411. And with the projected employment and population growth leading to increased traffic volumes, the travel times would continue to worsen. The worsening levels of congestion would increase, and the number of severity delays on other local highways, local streets, and the congestion and increasing volumes of trucks would also be a factor. And those trucks support both local industries and regional industries as they are gaining access to I-75. So the proposed solution, the proposed project, is to construct a new location roadway connecting US 411 to I-75, and it has a few key components. As we mentioned, it would be a new 4-lane divided highway from the existing US 411, US 41 interchange northeast across to I-75. It would include either new or modified intersections at existing cross streets that would consist of either roundabouts or reduced conflict U-turns. And it would include modifications to the existing interchange at US 411, US 41, as well as the new I-75 interchange that would include relocations of sections of Bush Drive and Old Grassdale Road. And the project would then end tying into Old Grassdale Road as 2 lanes. Now, this another aspect of the project is that the adjacent access will be controlled by Georgia DOT, with the corridor becoming a new state route. So the project goals, we have 4 key ones, and the proposed project would reduce through traffic, along two busy corridors right now, the State Route 140 and the US 41 State Route 20 corridors. It also would accommodate travel demand resulting from the increased population and employment growth in both Bartow and Floyd counties. That's both existing trends now and projected growth in the future. The proposed project would increase connectivity between Rome and the I-75 corridor, which would then improve local access and support regional economic development. And finally, it would provide an improved truck route to accommodate the freight movement while reducing the truck traffic on the existing local roads. And another element of the goal overall is to limit impacts wherever feasible in areas of community importance and sensitive resources. So what is the project timeline? The project in its new form was initiated in 2015 as the proposed RCDC based on the US 411 connector alignment feasibility study. So with stakeholder engagement and input from the Cartersville-Bartow Metropolitan Planning Organization, the project was initiated, and the project is on the priority list for the county with the Metropolitan Planning Organization's long-range plan that goes through 2050. And it's identified as a priority in their currently adopted transportation improvement program. So currently it's in what we call the preliminary engineering phase, and the environmental assessment has now been signed and published for review and comment by the public. It's now currently on the project website. You can find it and download. There's a link there that would allow you to download it as a PDF and look through it. And it's kind of the heart of the input being requested at the public hearing. Now, comments during the public hearing process, including the September 8th meeting, will help us complete the environmental study and confirm the preferred alternative, or if needed, to modify it, or in some cases, it could give input that would allow the selected no-build alternative as part of the overall NEPA process itself. If major changes occur to something that was previously shown to the community after the public hearing, then we would include additional public outreach to make sure we inform everyone of those changes. However, if no major changes are required or proposed and the project is approved as we currently have it now, identifying the preferred alternative, then the next steps would include approval for advancing to right-of-way acquisition and final design. And once that right-of-way acquisition is completed and final design is developed completely, then the project would advance to the construction phase at that time. So we want to give you a little bit of an overview on how you can continue to give us feedback during the next few weeks as we develop the public hearing process and welcome more of your input.
You can provide comments on the project by September 19th of this year by using any of the following methods. You can go online and the web address is listed there on your screen, or you can scan the QR code and go directly to the site. You can also call at 833-234-RCDC, or those last four digits are 7232. Or you can mail your comment card directly to the Georgia DOT. The address is listed there on your screen.
So at this time, we'll ask you to start sending your questions in using that chat feature, and we will then have the project team working on answers. And meanwhile, as we get ready to transition in that direction, we are going to go ahead and ask everyone to be ready to send any format. You can do it by chat. If you do it by phone, we will be able to hear and receive that recorded message and get it right into our system in English or Spanish, and whatever framework you need. So just be ready to move forward with that. And we're going to, as we transition to this, we're going to go toward walking into the final steps. Are there any reminders we need for our final steps for navigating, or do we cover the ground rules already?
Sure. Just a quick reminder for those who are joining us now, you can submit your question at any time, like Todd said, in the Q&A feature. We ask that you do keep your question concise and limited to this project, and please include your name and contact information with your question so that we can respond to you if your question requires a more detailed technical response.
Okay, well, as we kind of switch gears toward supporting your questions and coming up with the answers that you're looking for, we will start off here with a brief video. And as we're switching gears to serve you, you can go ahead and be entering in your questions through that option on the side of your screen, or any of them that you prefer.
What is the Rome-to-Cartersville Development Corridor, and why is it needed? The Georgia Department of Transportation, in cooperation with the Federal Highway Administration, is moving forward with planning efforts for the Rome-to-Cartersville Development Corridor. The RCDC will connect US 411 and I-75 in Bartow County. Here are some of the reasons the RCDC is needed. The need for improved access and connectivity to support economic development. Bartow County and Floyd County are quickly developing. The RCDC will provide enhanced access to existing and future development. The need for an improved truck route. The RCDC would not only accommodate growing freight traffic, but would also relieve truck congestion on other roadways. The need to provide better local access. The RCDC would help to increase mobility and connectivity in the corridor and throughout surrounding areas. The need for an improved connection to I-75. An improved connection to I-75 would support existing industry and planned growth in Bartow and Floyd counties. These needs were compiled in cooperation with local stakeholders from Bartow and Floyd counties.
Okay, we're going to continue now, and we are starting to have a few questions that have come in already. So we'll go ahead and get started on a few of these that have come in for more of a design focus. So I have with me here Ed Culkin, who's consultant project manager for the project, and he will be very familiar with a lot of the design details and some of the other questions that we'll be asking. So we'll go ahead and start with just a couple of questions that have come up. First one is, will there be detours?
Well, an off-site detour really is not what we're going to be doing here for this project, since it's on a new location and doesn't really need that in a majority of the areas. But the crossroads that we do come in contact with and connect to where there is live traffic, there will be some shifts, but they will be on site. Just basically moving the traffic over to away from the construction zone so that things like bridges and roads can be built or widened or adjusted, those types of things where, just move the traffic over, give the contractor an open area to build.
Okay. Here's another one. Why is it important to build a project now? I mean, isn't traffic slowing down in recent years?
Well, the traffic portion of that really isn't the main focus of this project. The purpose of this project is to provide a connection between US 411 and I-75 that will allow for a more direct route to 411, and that will reduce traffic along the adjacent corridors, like on State Route 140 and the US 411, US 41 and State Route 20. And to accommodate those the current and the future increasing populations and employment growth, both to Bartow County and to Floyd County. This corridor will provide much needed congestion relief within the network as a whole. And, you know, that's the major focus of this project is, you know, getting better connectivity between Rome and I-75 to help relieve congestion and support economic development.
Okay. Let's see, we've got another one here. Here's one. How many vehicles will travel on the new highway every day?
Well,
Daily traffic.
You know, it's based off of our traffic study, which, you know, it's a little different when you're when you're studying a new network. You've got a new corridor. You've got to look at the network as a whole and just kind of develop some factors of what kind of development's going to occur and how much demand the corridor gets as a whole. And we did a pretty extensive study of the entire network around where the corridor is going to be, not only from what the existing traffic is, but what also the demand will be for future development. And based off of that, we developed growth factors and determined how much traffic we're projecting to be onto the corridor. The open year design traffic for 2027, when the road opens, we're estimating at 12,300 cars a day, which term is average annual daily traffic. And then the design years is 20 years out, which is 24/7. And that design year traffic, we're estimating at 16,850 cars or AADT a day.
Okay, so that really gives you a sense of where it's going to pull some of the other traffic that we're discussing on the other local streets. All right, let's see. We've got another question here. You know, we mentioned it in the description. Someone wants to know why were roundabouts chosen?
Well, there's several factors that came to choosing roundabouts at, you know, 5 of the intersections, at least in the corridor. One was suggestions by the Citizens Advisory Committee. They requested to evaluate different alternative intersection designs rather than having a signalized intersection through this whole corridor. And so we took that into consideration early on in the project. And we did what they call intersection control evaluations, which is a process called ICE process, where we performed at each one of the intersections. We looked at and analyzed safety, operational, and cost benefits of not only the traditional intersections like signalized intersections or stop controlled intersections or you know, those types of conventional intersection types. We also looked at alternative intersection controls like the roundabouts, the restricted conflict U-turns, R-cuts. I'm so used to just saying R-cuts. And also like right in, right out type of intersections. We evaluated each one of those and did some close coordination with traffic operations to determine which was the appropriate intersection controls to be implemented at each intersection. And not only do we have the 5 roundabouts, one at Peoples Valley, one at Grassdale Road, 2 at the new interchange with I-75, and then 1 at Bush Drive. We also have some R-cuts, the restricted conflict U-turns, 1 at Keith Road, and there's also another one. We call it Ramp F, but it's down at the US 41 411 interchange to access the one on the south side of that interchange to access Rome-Cartersville on one of the ramps.
I see. Yes. So let's see what we have here. Go to the next question. All right, so we'll be looking at these coming up just right here. We got a couple more here. All right, so I think we've answered all of these except one for noise. So I'd like to ask one of our noise experts to be ready, and I will ask to join us and just give a little bit of an answer here on this noise question. I'm sure some people are going to be interested in that topic. So I would like to call on Byron Perkle.
Hi, Todd. Yes, this corridor will have noise levels ranging from 43 to around 65 or 66. There was one impact based on the noise abatement criteria at 66. And then there will be increases from 0 to 15 along the corridor. A noise impact is considered if it's a substantial increase above 15. So we had one impact at 15. There was one noise barrier analyzed for this corridor, and unfortunately it wasn't cost effective, so there are no proposed noise barriers for this project. And if you have specific details that you want for your resident, if you'll put your address in the comment sheet, we'll be able to look it up and either get the information back to you, or if we see you at the public hearing, we'll give you that information there as well.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Sir.
All right. Let's just go ahead and get down to trying to get some more in. All right. We have someone who wants to know, how will the project impact Peoples Valley Road? And so we could get a little bit of input from you, or also call on another team member here. You want to have a go at it?
Sure.
We'll bring Chad in as well if he wants to participate and help answer that question.
Sure. The corridor does go across Peoples Valley Road, and it will make a new intersection at that location. The intersection type will be a roundabout in that location, and it'll be a multi-lane, kind of connecting in with the 4-lane section with Rome-Cartersville, and the 2-lane section on the crossroad as well.
Okay. So yeah, I don't know if it probably will get Chad and some of the other design staff in on some other detailed questions. I think that's a good overview one for now. And let's see, another related question is about right-of-way. We mentioned that a few minutes ago as far as the overall project schedule, where we're at right now. And the question is, I guess more specifically, when will right-of-way acquisition start and how would owners be contacted? So I would like to call on right-of-way to be able to speak up on a little bit of the process for anyone to expect on that for the land acquisition process. And let's see, look for someone that's available. Let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and call on Michael.
Hey, good afternoon. The right-of-way acquisitions will start once we have an approved set of plans and funding and everything is in place. Those things are still being finalized. So once we have all that, the process will begin, and we'll send letters out, and then we'll begin making contact, to individual homeowners and things to walk through the process itself.
Okay. And we mentioned earlier that the environmental process is kind of underway now with the hearing, and there's a few steps left of that. So that would start after that process. The right-of-way process would kind of start in that mode. And And is there any other method that homeowners should be expecting to be contacted, that they'll receive a notification or letter or anything like that to help if they happen to not be available at the public hearing? Just to kind of repeat or add that reassurance for anyone who's wondering if they don't ever get a letter or hear anything, does that mean they're not taking that, or there are no properties needed from them? I hear that a lot.
No, I mean, there'll be multiple attempts, whether by letter. If the letters are returned, we'll knock on doors if we have to. It's not a deal. We'll make every attempt in every possible way. Phone numbers, emails, you name it. We'll make every attempt to contact everybody individually.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Okay, here's one that Ed, you're particularly familiar with. How many alternative routes were considered, and were the impacts as well as project timeline comparable? We could maybe tag team on that.
Well, there were numerous alternative routes that were studied, not only through our 2 times on this our time on this job, but since we got on board, we did a feasibility study. There were 5 corridors that were evaluated to determine if they were feasible corridors to evaluate, and different types of typical sections on several of the corridors were also evaluated. That was, I guess, the first part where you got on board.
Yes.
But when I got on board, we had selected the 2 feasible corridors, and evaluated both of them, both on the 2 different freeway type of section and the section that we're working on right now. We evaluated numerous criteria on determining which one was the most feasible and preferred alternative. And impacts to resources was a significant factor in what we were choosing and how we were approaching it. And so that timeline took probably about 5 years almost to get to that point where we determined what the preferred concept was. And then there were still some adjustments after that, once we get further into things and the environment or some additional studies got involved. And so we make small adjustments along the way. Each one of the corridors, the timelines would have been, I think the preferred corridor, the timeline was a little bit quicker than the other ones just because of the permitting aspects of the job. And we chose the one that was, I think, least impactful from those measures. And so a lot of times this just takes some time to get through the process, not only from a design perspective, but also from the process perspective on how we go through the NEPA process side by side with the design process. It's the whole plan development process that GDOT lays out for federally funded projects.
Yes, and it from the steps that you're describing of those multiple corridors, the whole team worked together, and kind of where this question is kind of headed as well. There were studies that kind of compared, and yes, the resources were kind of spread out in the area, very comparable. What developed though is that through this input in the years that refine it to the preferred alternative now, as the numbers in terms of impacts and the types of impacts continue to go down as we refined it, and the design was able to avoid a lot of the severe impacts that could have come about if you went through it without that sensitivity. All right, so thank you for that. And we will go to another one now. Let's see, as I make sure everyone's in place and ready to join in. We'll continue to show you more faces from the project team as the different topics come up. So let's look at one here What about the estimated cost? I think I'm gonna, that's a challenging one, and we're gonna ask Helen Hawkins to join in. And she is GDOT's project manager for this project right now. And we're gonna ask her to answer that question. Thank you, Helen.
No problem, Todd. Hello, everyone. Currently, our estimated construction cost for this project is $119 million. Our proposed right-of-way costs are around $19 million. Our utilities are around the $4.3 million, and mitigation for impacts is expected to be around $800,000. So our total project costs all included is approximately $143 million.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, we have another one in. Let's look at this. Will there be sidewalks in this project? So let's go ahead and pull in Chad Reed as part of the design team.
Hey, how are y'all?
Hey, Chad, we're going to ask a little bit here about where do sidewalks come into play on this project?
Yeah, given the typical section for this project is a rural roadway, the only places that sidewalks are needed or required would be around the roundabouts where we have curb and gutter to collect the water. So we do have some sidewalks, but they're isolated just around the 5 different roundabouts that we have. And then they interconnect a little bit when you get closer to the I-75 interchange. Sidewalks will kind of be connecting 3 different roundabouts and then across the bridge for I-75. So nothing further proposed at the moment regarding sidewalks.
Okay, thanks for that overview. All right, now another question. Just a general question on how will the environment be affected? Maybe we can tag team on this too.
We've been doing a lot of that on this project.
Mm-hmm. So I'll start. You can add some detail into it. So there will be some unavoidable impacts. Those are disclosed in the environmental assessment, along with measures that we've taken to try to avoid, measures to reduce, what we call minimize the impacts. Also mitigation. There's a complete mitigation plan. It's separate. You can download it within the project website separately. And it's also, if you have the entire EA, at the very back of it, skip the other 1,200 pages to the very back, and it's there as well. But in that mitigation plan, it highlights some of those unavoidable impacts. So there are some to ecology, some to cultural resources. There are some social type impacts. There are some displacements, and the project team worked to minimize those, and we are disclosing where those impacts ended up with this process in the EA right now. So yeah, anything on the design side of pulling that in?
Well, I guess what I would add to that is, it'd be very easy for me as a designer to pick point A to point B, connect a straight line, and go about my business to get it all connected. But we just can't design in a vacuum or design in a bubble. It's very iterative, and as we get new information, we've got to be able to adjust and be flexible with how we deliver the project. Environmental resources and understanding where they are as soon as we can helps drive how we present the geometry of the road, and then evaluate what those impacts are and what we can do to adjust. And it's something that we go back and forth you know, we've been doing this back and forth for several years to not only make the roadway sound, but also to protect the environmental resources. And, you know, we have flexibility, we have flexibilities in the design. We have the ability to be sensitive to our design on resources that are throughout the corridor. The streams and wetlands are obviously something that everybody can see out there, that and how we impact it is something that we keep a close eye on. And then there's of course the historic and the other archaeological cultural resources that we don't necessarily see, you know, just going out there, and it takes the professionals on the environmental side to tell us where those resources are, so that we can take those into account when we're laying out our geometry and designing other features, any kind of drainage and stuff like that, and be able to stage it, the construction stage it, or put in other features like walls and bridges to reduce the impacts, while adding a little bit of cost one way. It might take it away on the other side. So it's a balancing act that we do throughout the duration of the design. It just doesn't stop, you know, just because I say so, and it doesn't stop because you say it says so. It's part of how we play together in the sandbox, and be able to deliver what the community expects, and what DOT expects, and what FHWA expects.
Yeah. Well, well said. I will tell you, we have an interesting question here for you now as well, though. So someone's mentioned that they have the opinion that roundabouts don't sound like they would be logical for tractor trailers. We're talking about trucks and pulling in that truck traffic, but that doesn't sound logical. They want to know, are they off? Are roundabouts actually good for tractor trailer use?
They are, and you know, there's the one thing about a roundabout is, compared to a conventional intersection, is that you're reducing the conflict points where two flows of traffic cross each other. That safety aspect of reducing those conflict points and potentials for incidences are a major contributing factor of the safety of the roadway. And yeah, I think I understand from the perspective of you're putting this large truck into to drive around a circle. Mm-hmm. But there are things you can do with design that measures the performance of what the roundabout will do with various different vehicles, and how they work together, especially in the multi-lane configuration where they're going side by side. We do checks on each one of those, and how an oversized tractor trailer, like maybe 100-foot tractor trailer that's carrying a mobile home, or some sort of large oversized cargo, and whether they can travel around it safely and be able to use it in an appropriate manner. The other thing the roundabouts do is it slows traffic down, so the severity of accidents are reduced with using a roundabout, especially on you've got a corridor where people are going fast. You want to slow them down. You use the geometry of the roundabout and the approaches to the roundabout to slow folks down and be able to navigate it safely. And there are performance measures that we look at from the speed aspect of using that, and it's called the fastest path, and it is something that you measure to see how fast somebody can go in there without, completely ignoring the striping that's in there. So it's like a curb to curb thing, and how they're able to navigate it as fast as they possibly can. And and those types of items through a corridor here can make it a lot safer, while still managing and handling the traffic operations of the whole corridor, especially at the intersections.
Okay, so and I think another aspect of that is that in addition to the trucks being able to use that corridor, there are some pretty narrow roads that they're using right now through there. So
I think of Keith Road specifically, that and that one's even getting tore up. Just how much loading it's taking, but the 10-foot lanes through there are pretty difficult for a tractor trailer, and this is providing a different means of access for them particularly.
Okay, so we got another question here that's maybe just a simple version of it now. I think we'll have probably some other questions about cultural resources. There's a question though, will any historic homes be destroyed? And we have, I think that's something that I will say that our history experts, both within Georgia DOT and the project team, fed a lot of data into you, and we did a lot of research that allowed you from a design perspective to be aware of that. So you can give me that perspective if you want. And then if we have any other detailed questions that the historian wants to add perspective to that, we'll definitely include them. But I'm coming at this from like realizing they gave a lot of input that then you had to react to. And sometimes in the public, they don't realize how hard that is, and how hard you work to make that happen. So maybe respond to that a little bit.
Well, there's a lot of times we'll get the boundaries part of the way through the design, and those boundaries are then taken and they're evaluated against our construction limits, our design as a whole, and we see what kind of impacts we're making to the property itself, not only the building. One of them that I recall particularly was down at Rudy York Road, and it did have play a factor in where we set that alignment there, because the front end of it, when they first got it, was getting right into the front of their yard, and we pulled it back, and they had since rebuilt their property,
right,
but it still drove where the alignment was at the time before they started their redevelopment. Another one up on Keith Road, we had to make an adjustment in our alignment because of a floodplain, a republishing of a floodplain, and it came closer to that one property up at Keith Road, and we made some slight adjustments to where we wanted the line to go, where we wanted the corridor to go. We pulled off of it a little bit so that we could avoid any adverse impacts. And that's something that we do not only on this project, but it's part of how we get to where our design ends up being, is not just factoring in what I want to do geometrically, but also the effects to historic resources. And those are the first two options or the first two clear examples of what we actually did on this project that helped drive where the corridor is at this time.
Yeah. So that process enabled avoiding having to go right through a historic property.
That's
I want to just get a little bit of perspective here. One of our experts that we'll call on, and right here, bring in Chad from Georgia DOT, and you can just give a little bit of perspective on that. Maybe not specific detail unless you have it, but just in terms of that process and where GDOT really works hard to look at historic structures and the importance of avoiding them.
Yeah, sure. My name's Chad Carlson. I'm the historian lead for this project for GDOT, and we have a consultant, a historian in this project is also, and that's represented by Julie Coco from New South Associates here at the meeting. But whenever we have a project that uses federal funds, there's a law, a national law, and colloquially it's referred to as Section 106. But basically what Section 106 means is that whenever we use federal money, we have to do a review of historic resources in the area of the project. And that area we call the APE, which is the area of potential effects. And any resource that's over 50 years old or older, we've got to evaluate for its significance. And when I say significance, I mean we determine whether it's eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. And that's a process by which we evaluate and survey the resource, and we submit it to our federal partner and coordinator at the state level, which is the State Historic Preservation Office. And then together we make determinations whether a resource is eligible for the National Register or not. If we agree on the determination, that boundary for the national eligible resource is put on the plan set, and we do everything we can to avoid impacting that resource. We want to have least harm to it. So that means that if we're potentially going to harm the resource, we'll get with design and they'll work with the design to try to have least impact on the resource. So we do quite a lot of preliminary work on design before we actually implement the project to make sure that we have least harm on these resources. And that, again, that's the federal law of the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 106.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, and we will be calling on Julie here for some details that come up, I'm sure. And so we'll go ahead with another question now. Thank you everyone for sending these in. So let's look now. We have a couple more local areas mentioned. So we've talked about some of these local roads. We had a question earlier about Peoples Valley Road, but how far north of Old Grassdale and Peoples Valley Road intersection will any of the residents be directly affected?
The specific dimension on that, maybe Chad could give, but generally speaking, you know, it'd be a pure guess on my part without doing the measurement. But when we cross over both of those roads, we're connecting in. I'm going to guess probably about 500 feet, maybe 600 feet, maybe 700 feet back to the existing, and that's not only to tie in the vertical grade together with the new corridor, but it's also to shift the lanes back to existing and tie down to existing, considering both of those roads, Peoples Valley and Old Grassdale, they're going to have they're connecting into a roundabout. And when you shift the lanes, it's called a deflection into the roundabout to angle the vehicles appropriately into the roundabout to navigate it safely. There's what we call a splitter island that we add there to separate the two flows of traffic and set the appropriate angles. And so it takes a little bit of time or a little bit of distance from the roundabout itself to tie it into the existing. Now, particularly at Old Grassdale Road, that connects, that has an intersection just south of the corridor with Old Grassdale Road and Peoples Valley. That one particularly, there's an existing intersection there that we're just north of it. So there's some influence between the two with how far back we have to go. We because they're close there, we angled and realigned Old Grassdale Road a little bit further south to build a new intersection there and then tie it back further down from there. So.
Okay. So let's do one more here. There's a question, we do have some, a lot of single family residences through there, but there are also some rentals either in homes that are being rented out, or a couple places there are mobile homes. There's near, but not in the corridor itself. There's apartments, but primarily someone's wondering how renters would be contacted about the project. So I wanted to pull up someone from Right Away again to introduce. So if you can turn your attention toward me, I will queue up someone and we'll have an answer for you here in just a minute. Get video set. So again, the question for Right Away is how renters will be contacted about this process. You know, we think about the owners, but the residents there include a fair number of renters. So Michael, if you want to go ahead, I can share a view of you while you answer again like you did so well before.
Sure. There's a variety of factors that go into that. It depends on the property owner, the tenant interest, and related details of that. We're happy to talk to anybody that would like to send their contact information, but typically the initial contact goes with the property owner, whoever that may be. But we'd be happy to talk to anybody that's on the project. So, but as far as those details, it typically starts with the property owner.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Good information. All right, so let's see here. We've got another question that's come in. Will the definite road layout be at the in-person meeting on 9/8?
Yes. In fact, I got the
Two
prints
different
today.
ways.
Yeah, we will be showing the current design at the in-person meeting next week. And there'll be plenty of people in attendance to answer anyone's questions about their specific areas of the project that they have concerns about or questions about, or how it affects their property, you know, or just the project as a whole.
Yeah.
Todd will be there.
Yeah.
I'll be there. So.
And I also like to ask Helen to kind of cover a couple of details there with it, as far as how someone could actually, different ways we have that someone could see this. They refer to it as the definite, but as far as where a preferred alternative is right now. So Helen, I'll ask you to just kind of add a little bit to what Ed said there, if you'd like. And we're trying to make this available to individuals in a few different formats now and on 9/8, right?
Absolutely. So we will be holding our public hearing open house next Thursday, and we will have the proposed alignments posted in several locations, and you can ask any questions you want at that time. In addition, we have a website that shows all this information, and we can post that in the published chat for you guys so that you can see it. It's kind of long, so I don't want to try and spell it out to you guys verbally. In addition, you can always contact me if you have any questions, and my email address is hhawkins@dot.ga.gov. And our public information meeting will typically we accept responses through our website and through the regular snail mail, which that'll also should be on your postcards if you receive postcards, but it's also will be on a handout at our in-person public information meeting. And you can send, it has the address to Mr. Eric Duff on that, so that you can send them. But we will be accepting these for probably 2 weeks. Shouldn't say probably. We will be accepting responses and questions for 2 weeks afterwards, and then we will respond once we've had a chance to all review the potential answers and appropriate answers. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Okay, so we have now, let's see. All right, so another one is, I'm gonna bounce right back to Michael. We have another right-of-way question. Will you provide access where you purchase land from private landowners? So, Michael, if you can think about that and be ready to answer, we'll invite you back on here.
So there's a few different things that go into access as far as that would go. Some of that's more design related. So it's it really just depends on what the rules are, what the access is allowed. You know, if there's a you know, existing driveway, or if there's a moving driveway, a relocated driveway, just depends on what, you know, what the design is. There's a lot of things that go into that, so it's really the question really is more, it depends. So it depends on what, you know. I know there's some limited access as well, so there's a lot of factors that go into that. So it's really just going to see, you know, where the location of the parcel is and what the current access is, what's required.
All right. Yes. Understand. So while you're there, before I let you go, let me ask you another question, because another one's coming now for right away. So, and I've encountered this in a lot of other public meetings over my years. You know, folks who understand they're going to be affected, a lot of times they just want to have some way to plan out ahead. Like, give me an idea, how soon would I have to move? So the question is, what time frame would someone that would have to be relocated, what timeline would they have to move? And the way they worded it is actually after the actual purchase. Is there a timeline where you could, you know, allow a certain amount of time, or is it, you know, typical closing dates or whatever? So that's their question. So
it depends. Obviously, if we're speaking about a relocation, that's which would be, you know, the purchase of, you know, the house itself. So typically you'd make an offer for a relocation, and it's 90 days from that day or 60 days from the date that it's acquired at the closing. So, you know, if the closing takes 2.5 months to close, obviously your 60-day clock wouldn't start until after that time. And, you know, after that, your 90-day time clock would obviously expire. So 90 days from the date of the relocation offer, or 60 days from the closing, whichever is longer of those two.
Okay. Thank you for that. Good specific information there for them. All right. Let's see here. We also have a couple others. All right. So now another question came up, and I'm going to ask Helen if she would like to answer this again, because question is about how long it's going to take from the time a construction contract is awarded before the project will actually be open to traffic.
So once we let the project to construction, we're anticipating 48 months of construction due to the number of bridges and walls and the fact that it is new location.
Okay. All right. That sounds good as far as a good specific answer there. And yeah, and more details about the process to get to that point. You know, we've talked about a little bit about that. So we're not talking about 48 months from today. There's several steps to get to that part. But 48 months process to get open to traffic. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Next we have one. You know, Michael, if we're going to have you back one more time here, someone is saying they'd like to know if their home really is affected because they've had their home already surveyed several times, and yeah, that they haven't really, I guess, been given anything specific about that surveying, and they're wondering is there a timeline for when they actually will be contacted? I know that's somewhat similar to what we had before, but just to kind of respond to that.
Yeah, so there is again a timeline that would begin once we have plans in hand and everything is ready to go on our end. I believe we're supposed to have everything kind of getting started here towards the end of the year. So once we have plans in hand that we can then have the scope and all of the things that need to be done as far as appraisals go, get that started, and then get the timeline for all of those put in place. Those really would really allow us the opportunity to set a more definitive timeline once we can have those finalized plans. My assumption would be, and somebody on design could probably speak to the need to resurvey a property. I don't know if the right-of-way area has changed, so that would be that may be why that was done. I'm not really sure. Maybe somebody could explain that a little more in depth from design as to why a survey was done a couple more times.
Okay, yeah, I think Ed, you should be able to give a little bit of perspective on that.
Well, there could be several reasons why it was resurveyed. I'm assuming if it was recently, it might have been something concerning a staking for one of our other studies, whether that's staking the bridge end rolls to confirm that the bridge is in the right location, or it may have been staking for doing some sort of soil investigation for either the bridge foundation, not the bridge foundation, but it could have been for some of the drillings for the soil survey. It really just depends on your specific property. Those types of questions would be better answered at the in-person event, so that we can look at your particular situation and give you a more definitive answer. There's several items that have been happening here recently with getting some surveyors out there to collect another piece of data to continue through the process. But I would recommend discussing more in depth about your particular situation at the in-person event next week.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we want to take a minute to remind, you can look at this, these slides, I'll just kind of click through, but remind everyone, you can get involved in this meeting at any time. If you just joined us, that's totally fine. All we ask is if you have a question, you can click into the Q&A event. It looks like and works just like a chat box. You enter it in, and then we will be able to see it and have our project team working through ways to answer it, get the right information to you. Then we'll add it both here in our conversation and adding it back in that Q&A box. If it's something that's more detailed, we will let you know that we're going to be working toward it, and then we will come back in the near future, the next few days, if something needs more detail or we need to get more clarification from you outside of this window. We do have, we're into the second hour of it now, so I want to remind everyone, please participate that way. Another option you can do is, if you rather just like do a quick call, you're not where you could type something, you can dial that number, 833-234 RCDC, and if you leave a voicemail, you don't necessarily have, you can be anonymous in the Q&A, so you can do the same thing really with the voicemail. If you want your information to be shared, you can say your name and other contacts, but if you want to be anonymous, just say, hey, leave an anonymous question and describe your question, and that will actually send us an instant email during this time, and we can pull it and add it into everyone else's. So you're welcome to do either of those formats. And then you also have opportunities to participate during the rest of this period. We're going through comments all the way for more than 2 more weeks, so that you could click right now and find the website, look at materials, and someone can click and have the phone version. They could do a quick mobile feedback form and fill it out right there from your phone. So you're welcome to do that at any time during this period through the 19th. And that will be the same information, the same types of comment questions as will be at the physical public hearing, the PHOH, that will be on the 8th. So we welcome all forms of that participation and encourage you to do it. And it's also in English and Spanish, because we have provided translated files and specific ways to make it easier for someone to participate in Spanish. Okay, so from that then, I wanted to look at another one here. Yeah, so a question came up, and I would like to ask Chad to be ready to talk to us a little bit more about this again. So we've talked a little bit about roundabouts, and but then also someone's asked to be more specific with the particular location. We mentioned the different existing cross streets, and they want to know, did we mention a roundabout being at Keith Road? So can you describe the actual proposed intersection at Keith Road?
Sure. I believe at one point we did look at a roundabout for this intersection, but through studies it was determined that it needed to be what's called an R-cut. R-cut provides access off of the main line to Keith Road, so you'll be able to turn right or left onto Keith Road from either direction. But it does restrict the traffic coming from Keith Road onto RCDC. Traffic from Keith will have to turn right only. They'll only be able to turn right, but then within a little while from that, you know, our cuts require you to provide U-turn access. So we have U-turn lanes, both north and south of the Keith Road intersection for anyone that would maybe need to turn left, but couldn't otherwise. So it is a little bit of a restricted intersection, but it still provides all the mobility that you would need.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good to clarify, because that's the one exception from, I think all of them are roundabouts except for that one, right? Did I say that correctly?
Well, you've got other intersections. You got the ramps and all at 411 that we have some crossovers, but you know,
Yeah.
in the main corridor, that is the only one that that didn't come up to utilizing a roundabout.
Yes. Yeah, sounds good. Well, let me see. I think another question just came in. Thought I saw one that also not so much design, but this goes back to our question about trucks. Someone wants to know about freight traffic. We talked a little bit about in the overview as far as these existing and future conditions. We've studied a little bit about it. You had to study about it. You had a whole traffic process that had to look at that. So someone wanted to mention, they want to know a little bit more about how, just how much is that freight supposed to grow in the projected traffic related to freight?
Well, part of this is, you know, what, not only what developments are there, but what developments Cartersville, Bartow, MPO are expecting in that area, and the demand that the folks in Rome and Floyd County need. And so, you know, those studies were you know, the input from those stakeholders were certainly part of the we're involved in the study to determine it. But the truck traffic in the corridor, it varies on piece by piece of where you are, but you know, generally speaking, it's about 14 to 15% truck traffic within the corridor, and and that not only has a factor on the mobility and what the needs are, but it also factors into the pavement design, because the trucks are obviously a much bigger vehicle and have bigger loadings and on the pavement, and being able to provide the structural capacity of not only of that piece of the road, so that it doesn't get tore up afterwards. But so yeah, about 15%. I think in the largest cases about 15%.
And I think there was an estimate just in terms of the numbers. More than 2,000 trucks a day. So one thing that I was thinking about as we studied it is how some of those trucks would otherwise have to find other routes to get through to 75 back and forth. So it's intended as a truck route as one of its goals that we discussed earlier, and that 15% translates to that range of the vehicles. So okay, so I wanted to look now at another one. It's a little broader, but important in terms of the overall context, and that's how it really matches up with planning in the surrounding area. So I think we've both been involved with a lot of the local stakeholders for these several years. So maybe if we could talk a little bit about that as far as where it is in their priorities and what kind of consensus and engagement we've had with some of those local stakeholders.
Well, the stakeholders have been a major contributor to this project. We did develop a citizens advisory committee, and that committee was built with members of the local governments, property owners, and the business community. Some of the major ones, I think the major ones, you had Bartow County, you had Cartersville, you had the Cartersville-Bartow MPO, you had folks from Floyd County, you had folks from the city of Rome, and of course many of the other legislators that represent this whole area, not only where the project is, but also who it's serving. The business community was involved. Anheuser-Busch obviously has a major, it affects them directly on how they get their trucks from the plant and connected into the corridor. You got the folks from Beaufort. We had many meetings with them talking about their access. Those two just come to mind. I don't know if it's scars or what, but just the discussions with them. It's very important to have it, to understand what their needs are and how it affects the project, and come to the right direction of where we need to go with it. And then there's property owners. And I can't remember their name, but the farm owners right there at Old Grass Hill and Cass White.
Yeah, distinguished farm and family there. Yeah, so we had a good cross section of folks from different levels of business, community organizations. So yeah, that
churches.
Yeah, it's been pretty broad discussion over the past several years. Now, part of the question is like where it fits in the context of kind of their plans, and so it is a priority project within both of the counties, and it's based in Bartow, but it's also a priority within Floyd County. And the environmental assessment includes in the appendix some of the resolutions and letters of support from local officials, and we've been involved with the transportation planning side of the county as that responsibility, what they call the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Been involved with them throughout this whole process. So thank you for that question. But it is important, and it's important to know that Georgia DOT has been working closely with them over the years, and that this preferred alternative is an outcome of a lot of that coordination. All right, what do we have? Okay, here's a couple of questions that have come in. related to landscaping. So let's say first, let's ask, someone wants to know what kinds of landscaping will be beside the new highway, like in the median. I guess just trying to get a visualization of what it will look like when it's all said and done. And what about landscaping or artwork in the roundabouts?
Well, at this point, for the corridor as a whole, there really is not much in terms of landscaping features being provided in the median or along the roadway. It'd be a standard grass median with grass shoulders and slopes with the ditches and such. But so most of it is just going to be grass. In the roundabouts itself, we may be able to provide trees and shrub plantings. Some of them are vines. There are standards that DOT has for typical landscaping within those roundabouts, and a lot of it is determined based off of where you are in the state and such, based off of the soil conditions and what the appropriate landscaping will be able to withstand the weather and not just sit there and die. I mean, you gotta be able to maintain it. And the county is also involved with that in most cases on what they're able to help maintain within the corridor. The local governments definitely have a stake in those, especially around the roundabouts. There's not only the being able to maintain them, but also the lighting of the roundabouts. They have to come to an agreement on how they maintain it and be able to service it and such. So that's where a lot of it's going to end up being isolated to is the roundabout centers.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so that essentially answers the related questions someone had, like, as far as if they're near the road. So I think you covered it well. Those are steps that can be refined, and that's again part of what we invite someone if they see that they're going to be really near and aren't sure where exactly maybe the property might have some acquisition, or they just think they're going to be near it. If you have a question about the landscaping or have something important you want to share as far as your perspective on that, that's one of those great opportunities to fill out a comment card. Again, we're continuing to show these details in part of the screen, but those comment cards, even if you do not make it in person to the public hearing, your input counts the same way. If you fill it out online with that mobile app or some other method, and just go ahead and ask a more detailed landscape question or anything like that you want to. All right, so let's move on then. We actually have a question now about air quality. So I would like to ask our expert on air quality to go ahead and join in with us here. And if you can, I can go ahead and add them to the screen here, just to make sure. And we'll call on Byron to go ahead and answer that. And so the question is going to be, it's more of a just kind of a comment, I guess you could say, but the idea is that the project is going to bring more air pollution to the area. So Byron, can you kind of help talk about that a little bit as far as what we could expect in terms of the overall air pollution concern?
Yeah, the roundabouts will alleviate some of the stop and go queuing of the T intersections and four-way intersections. So it should create a more even flow process for carbon monoxide from the vehicles. CO has been alleviated from the Georgia. There's no longer a non-attainment for CO or PM 2.5. So both of those scenarios are going to improve based on this construction of the corridor. All federal and state guidelines and guidance have been met for the air quality assessment for this project, and there were no impacts found for either CO, MSAT, PM 2.5, or ozone. So there should be an issue with air quality this far out from the city.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that explanation. All right, and Byron, we will definitely get back with you if we have any other quick questions on air or noise.
Sure, thanks.
All right, so now we have another question that's come in, and it's about archaeology. Someone's concerned about archaeological resources that might be near the project area, and just really what consideration was given to archaeology. So we will be ready now to call on our archaeology specialist, and let's see if Patty is ready to join in. Let's see. Yep. So Patty, if you want to help, just give an overview of archaeology. Like, how are they really considered?
Sure, I can speak to that. I also have a GDOT Office of Environmental Services counterpart on here, Nicole. If she'd like to step in at all, then that's fine. Otherwise, I can do this. But we basically have the same process that Chad, the historian, talked about earlier. And so the archaeological survey was conducted throughout the project area as well as surrounding areas to identify any archaeological resources that might be impacted by the project. And the details for the archaeological resources are protected by state and federal laws. But when we identify the archaeological sites in the project areas, we subject them to an assessment of effects, and that determines the level of impacts. Once this has been accomplished, we explore measures to avoid, minimize, or mitigate any adverse effects, and that's typically through an agreement with the State Historic Preservation Office or any tribal historic preservation offices. In most cases, through initiating these studies early on in project development, we are able to avoid the archaeological resources that are eligible for the National Register of Historic Places. So.
Okay, yeah, that's very good overview there. And thank you. All right, so let's see, what's our next question here? We are also looking at another question that just came up. I believe, let's see. Oh, there's one we had a bit ago related to archaeology. I think it's basically history or archaeology. So we may have more than one person who wants to answer it. But the question is, being interested in history, whether someone's part of a historical society or just interested in that as kind of a topic, but just generally want to know if any of the historic resources will be affected in an adverse way. And so we'd like to go ahead and ask if someone from history, particularly Julie, if you're ready, we can have you go ahead and kind of talk through that a little bit with us.
Be happy to do that after I unmute my microphone. Through the process of doing a survey for NRHP eligible historic resources and completing our assessment of effects for those that were eligible, we determined that there were, and this is all in consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office, going through federal highways and obviously GDOT. It was determined that there are 2 historic resources where there will be an adverse effect. Neither of these historic resources, however, are directly affected by the project, meaning in this case, there's no construction-related activities that are actually going on within those boundaries. Instead, the effects to those two resources are visual to one, and from the second one, it's what we call an indirect effect from things that kind of happen peripherally that are in response to a project from just industrial growth in the area and additional transportation projects coming down the pike. These effects will be mitigated through photographic documentation and a historic narrative or booklet. And in addition to the two historic resources, there was one historic archaeological site. Patty, would you like to speak to that piece?
Sure, I can do that a little bit. But as we mentioned before, the details for archaeological sites are considered sensitive information, so we can't really discuss a lot of it at this time. So there is one impacted archaeological site, but as we said in the assessment of effects, we go through as many measures as we can to avoid, minimize, and mitigate adverse effects. We just can't go through the details of those at this time. But if I'm incorrect in that, then you can, Nicole, you can let me know what else I might be able to pass on at this time.
Thank you. So thank you both for that, and we may have another one or two health resource questions in a bit, but right now, someone asked a question, and we will repeat it, and we can't say it enough because we want to make sure everyone has a chance to hear and have an easy way to get involved. So someone wants to know, like, the in-person meeting again. So if you're familiar with Old Cass High School, it is now called the Bartow County College and Career Academy. They have it's kind of an alternative creative high school for someone who wants to get a vocation, and that's like part of the attendance, and the other part is like technical college. So they have a large parking area, and they have a large cafeteria. So it actually is in the cafeteria, and there's a specific entrance over on the side, not the main school entrance, but we'll have that all set up with signs. But essentially, if you're familiar with that area, that it also is the address of 738 Grassdale Road, not Old Grassdale Road, just Grassdale Road, Grassdale Road Northwest. And it'll take you to that section where it's a really like a long drive and a large parking lot. It's free, ample public parking. And you're welcome to drop in anytime between that 4 and 7 window. There's no set presentation. You can just drop in and get the materials and then fill them out later. You can do it there. We'll have different methods for you. So looking forward to seeing you. All right, so Chad, I'm going to ask you to be ready to help again. This question's coming in about Habersham. So will Habersham Estate still have access to be able to use Old Grassdale from Old Grassdale to Grassdale Road? Or will the new road do away with Old Grassdale Road as it's currently configured? So if you're ready to talk about that, then I'll go ahead and welcome and turn it over to you to give them a little bit more detail about that.
Yeah, definitely. We made every effort to keep Old Grassdale Road open. There will be a realignment of the intersection with Peoples Valley, but it will still remain open to traffic. So Old Grassdale will remain, and all access that you currently have, I would say going south, you will remain. The bridge across I-75 will be removed. The road will end just south of I-75, and there'll be a cul-de-sac there. But definitely going south towards Grassdale Road, traffic will be able to flow as normal.
And we definitely thank everyone for participating. We will be excited to get any kind of feedback through the different ways that we talked about, whether it's through this question and answer chat or it could be through phone. Not sure if anyone has used the phone yet, but you definitely can do that, or also the methods for getting in touch and just leaving the comments through the hearing process. You could also be looking on the website right now, and you can go through several videos that show you what the roundabout activity would be like, what the R cut, how it would operate. A simulation video is there that we had introduced first in 2019. It's all there. So if you go to the website, you can find those details. And there's actually quite a few materials that are now ready. It's kind of been evolving over the past few years, but this new layout is GDOT's project website, and they provide it in a way that lets you download a good number of materials. So you could even get the 3 maps that represent the same panels that Ed is going to provide everyone else at the hearing. We will have those in a JPEG so that it's ready to download. So yeah, that works. And what we'll do is, you can use that at any time to download. It will actually download on a phone. It might take a minute, but you can download and see the image, and you can actually use it to kind of zoom around and look. So if you go on the website and scroll to the bottom where it's got documents, I think they're called Layout 1, Layout 2, Layout 3. Those files are really good ones to have in your downloads, and then you can kind of see it on the board if you come to the physical PHOH meeting and go from there. So let's look here if I can find another one that's come in. I think we mentioned this before, but let's kind of reiterate this. Yeah, I think that we had one question about the construction, and we confirmed with Helen earlier. So it's a 48-month approximate process for the construction itself. There are, of course, several steps from this process to when that would actually start. So we had identified that in the intro earlier. All right. So yeah, and I mentioned earlier you could download and look at different images. So while we're getting in a few more questions and kind of tracking down some answers, we will actually be able to share with you that simulation of the project corridor. And I will run that here in just a minute when we have it keyed up. So, and I don't know if you've actually given this explanation, Ed, but we have another question here about roundabouts. We've had a good bit of interest already. Like, just the overall concept of how they're supposed to help. I mean, don't people get confused?
Well, roundabouts, there's several demonstrated points about roundabouts that show that there are a benefit, from several different perspectives. The safety, I think I talked a little bit about that before with reduction in conflict points of, 2 streams of traffic coming together. Typically a traditional intersection has about 32 conflict points, and roundabouts typically have 8. And that can change just based on how the different layouts are, but they also handle traffic a little bit more efficiently with not having a stop and start condition everywhere. You got the yield condition, so you can have a continuous stream of traffic going through it. You have lower speeds traveling through a roundabout. You don't have folks on at signalized intersections trying to beat the yellow and it turning red, and other people trying to jump the green and having accidents at high speeds. Roundabouts generally influence drivers' traveling speeds at a lower rate, and so if there is an incident, it's usually less impactful, less severe, however you really want to say that. So it reduces that reduction in not only the amount of accidents that would typically occur at traditional intersection. It's the severity of the accidents are reduced as well, so you don't have the bodily harm or the destruction of property that you would have, and with two cars going as fast as they can at each other, that you could have at other intersections.
Yeah.
It's just, those are some of the benefits that you get out of a roundabout.
So let me listen to one thing you said again for if nothing else, good trivia. So how many conflicts do we typically run into, and how many are typically in a roundabout? But no one really thinks about that. Did I hear you say 32 points of conflict?
32 typically is 32 points of conflict. And that's, different streams of traffic crossing over each other. Roundabouts typically reduce that down to 8.
Wow. I mean, that's a great.
It's a significant safety improvement. And then if you combine that with reducing people's speeds, I got a 16-year-old. That's all I talk to him about is reduce your speed when you're traveling. I remember when I was 16 and speeding around and everything like that. But and that's one of the major benefits. The safety aspect of roundabouts is pretty dramatic when you consider other types of intersections, and they do handle the traffic more efficiently. You will get an operational benefit out of it as well. That's it's something that early in my career where roundabouts were not being implemented. It took me a little time to come over to it, but once you start really looking around at it and seeing it operate and experiencing it and studying it, roundabouts are a very efficient intersection, a very safe intersection that I'm happy to see Georgia, not only on this project, but around the state, implementing them on a much wider scale than they have in the past.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of a process that we've seen on projects and in communities, really, especially I'd say over the past 7-8 years here in Georgia. So they are more common, and GDOT continues to apply lessons learned and that kind of thing. And I think one of the things for everyone is like just being a little bit afraid of trying it for the first time, or not being familiar with the movements at one particular new intersection. So there'll be a learning process for this. If this is implemented, it would have of course opportunity for people to see it coming together. If it affects local access, local change in traffic pattern, that is just like any other construction project would have, directional signs and help someone kind of navigate it during the construction. And, their resources, not only with GDOT's tools like the video, but even if someone just needs to understand it better, I think there's a lot of resources that can be provided for folks so that they understand it's different. It may seem like a challenge at first, but ultimately when you can cut the number of conflicts at an intersection by that much and keep the efficiency, it works great. And I think that spoke to another question that had come up related to roundabouts, but like, why not signals? I don't know if we covered that specifically before, but I think there have been some discussion about, would signals help or hurt the goals of the project?
Well, that was one thing early in the project that the Citizens Advisory Committee did not want to see through this corridor. They wanted to, and they were very forthright on not wanting to have this corridor be signalized and have a start and stop and a start and stop type of condition through there that you might get with a signal, with a series of signals. And they asked many times about looking at different types of intersections. They originally called the J hooks, which are, a lot of other states will call the R-cut type of intersections J-hooks. And so that was one thing that we certainly took into consideration at the front end of it. And then backed it up with the technical analysis through the ICE evaluation, intersection control evaluations. But, considering some of the truck traffic and all, R-cuts aren't necessarily the most efficient way to carry traffic around with truck movements, especially with, having to make a right turn in major trucks with major truck traffic. It's not as efficient as maybe you would see in a roundabout condition where you can get trucks through at lower speeds, mind you, but you can get them through without having the U-turn movements as you would with all the J-hooks. And that's part of part of the deciding factor, or part of the decision tree, I guess you would say, through there. But certainly the local governments were supportive and really encouraged us to take a look at these things with those types of alternative intersections, to not have signalized intersections all over the place.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. I know that we had a couple who were wondering about that. Okay. Yeah. Let's have a kind of a general question, not so much detailed right away, but about, someone's wondering, about effects on subdivisions. And I think this goes back to what we said earlier, how we adjusted, we tried to minimize. You saw where the resources were. Some of those may have been official boundaries of a historic or archaeological type resource, or it may have been known about subdivisions, but generally where the alignment goes and what efforts were made to try to avoid those subdivision type impacts.
Oh, sure. There was, we had the question before about the Habersham subdivision earlier, and how their access was going to be maintained and still be able to use Old Grassdale Road to the Grassdale Road entrance. And we had several different iterations of the alignment going in and around Habersham. Even some of the initial ones had numerous displacements at the front end of it. And we made adjustments to, that was one factor of it, but, then there's floodplain next to it that also drove where the alignment ended up being, which I don't recall if those properties were attached to the Habersham subdivision or not, but, it was a reduction of impacts where we ended up putting it in that location.
Yes.
Then I think back to where you have the golf course and
that was another question.
The subdivision. Yeah, well, yeah, but you have the golf course, you have the power line, the transmission line. There's a subdivision. I don't remember the name of that subdivision on that gets adjacent to the transmission line right away. And where we had the alignment, there was that old historic house right next to the off of Rudy York that was next near, or just down the street from the golf course. And we had several ways of where we were connecting in with that to get it back on basically the paralleling the old Grassdale Road north of Grassdale Road. Understanding where we needed to be and what the impacts were, they kind of, and we had a lot of choices to make. Were we going to go through the golf course and impact at the time a historic resource, or were we going to and have to cross under the transmission line, or were we going to avoid the transmission line and go through a subdivision? Or were we going to cross under the transmission line, clip the golf course, and run along the backside of the historic property and get into its view shed. And we did some view shed analysis on that, and then they redeveloped it. So we appreciate that. You know, you look at different ways to connect A to B, and they may all work geometrically, but are they the right decision? And each one of those paths has numerous different impacts that you have to weigh against each other and choose what is the best context sensitive solution in that particular point of the project. And, you know, I can break this project up into, you know, 4 or 5 different sections that had critical elements that help drive getting through each one of that get through this section to avoid these things, and then getting through this section to set you up for the next one.
Right.
And then getting through the other one to set you up for the next one. And you just kind of got to balance it all and time together and see what the right solution is to avoid resources of competing interests. It's kind of how I've always viewed it is, you know, you got this area and all these interests are competing against each other. What's the right one to balance? The right way to balance it through there and make the path work for the project.
And that's where working kind of closer together, design and environmental, address the all the maze of regulations we have to look at. Well, that's captured in our NEPA documentation. So
we can't work in a vacuum. That's for certain. You work in a vacuum, you're working against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, that's a good kind of summary description there. That whole process that we've gone through, and a lot of the design and environmental coordination back and forth, you know, is kind of threaded throughout the environmental assessment. And I want to direct you again that you can go back to the website and you can find that anywhere, either through the website itself, or if you see it here on there's a couple of spots in our video we'll get ready to show in a minute. But once you get into the website, there's a way to download the EA. You could look through and read just about any of these topics that we've covered today, the discussion, the findings, the impacts, and if there's relevant coordination, correspondence, it's all captured there for input, along with the stakeholder coordination, the public involvement we've had over the past several years. So it's all there, and I encourage you to use that method to learn about the project. There's also shorter files that give you the summary of like the mitigation. There's a mitigation plan. There's tables of mitigation and several important files. So if you go to the website and kind of scroll down toward probably the bottom third, you'll see a document library, and then there's several spots too as well that I think they use the phrasing of leaving feedback, and that's where you can submit your comment. And it will look like a mobile survey. So welcome you to do that. But we can run one more video perhaps, and just to show you a few more details or remind you of the details of following back in if you have other questions. So we'll go ahead and start running that momentarily. And in the meantime, we'll circle back with you and just remind you of the final contact information.
What is the Rome to Cartersville Development Corridor and why is it needed? The Georgia Department of Transportation, in cooperation with the Federal Highway Administration, is moving forward with planning efforts for the Rome to Cartersville Development Corridor. The RCDC will connect US 411 and I-75 in Bartow County. Here are some of the reasons the RCDC is needed. The need for improved access and connectivity to support economic development. Bartow County and Floyd County are quickly developing. The RCDC will provide enhanced access to existing and future development. The need for an improved truck route. The RCDC would not only accommodate growing freight traffic, but would also relieve truck congestion on other roadways. the need to provide better local access. The RCDC would help to increase mobility and connectivity in the corridor and throughout surrounding areas. The need for an improved connection to I-75. An improved connection to I-75 would support existing industry and planned growth in Bartow and Floyd counties. These needs were compiled in cooperation with local stakeholders from Bartow and Floyd counties.
Okay, so we will wrap up here with a few reminders. We definitely appreciate everyone for joining us and asking questions. We tried to answer all of them. If there were any that needed some follow-up, we will certainly be on board to track down those answers and get back in touch with whatever method you indicated that we could reach you after the meeting. And I just want to remind everyone one more time to participate any way that you can, and we welcome your participation through this process to submit comments on the project. And the QR code is a quick way to get to that mobile version. You can find it on the website. We've talked about it a few times. You can contact us for any kind of questions on the phone line. And then if you prefer the process of like writing out the comment and mailing it just so you know for sure it got to someone official, there's the official contact information to mail it to GDOT. So at this point, we want to thank everyone for their participation and let you know that we will be glad to welcome any other comments particularly through September 19th, which is when the official comment period closes. And we would then be in a coordination process. So we have this hearing that's coming up, and they'll have the display boards. We'll have a lot of paper materials. Nothing at the meeting is more detailed than what we have on the website. They're a match. And then after that public hearing process, we also will end up with combining all the comments and working through them to establish responses in writing, similar to what we've done in this quick version here. And then that document will come out and we'll provide it back out to the public. So we thank you very much for all of your participation and look forward to seeing you on September 8th. And if not, we look forward to seeing some of your feedback through one of the other means. And we look forward to meeting you then. And until then, take care and goodbye.